guys, Victor here with another brand new video. Now, we are officially done with UFC Fight Island Part 1, which is UFC 251. And I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really think that the whole entire card delivered. The main card was good. Max Holloway did get screwed over by the judges, and I'll talk about the judging system in another video just because of how much of a problem that it really is in the sport of mixed martial arts, and also especially with the UFC, because a lot of fighters have been screwed over lately and have been screwed over the years because of the judging, not only in the UFC but also in Bellator and other organizations all around the world. Now, for this video, I really want to talk about UFC Fight Island Part 2. Ige versus Kattar, which is going to be the main event for tonight. Yes, it is going down tonight. It's going to be going down in a couple of hours, which is really exciting. Prelims start at 7. Main card starts at 10. It is the morning right now, very early in the morning over in Abu Dhabi because they are 8 hours ahead of us. So the majority of the fighters on there either were training with their regular time in their prospective countries, or decided to get acclimated to the Abu Dhabi time, which is very difficult to do, especially when you have a week to fight. So it's obviously difficult. So if other fighters decided that they wanted to go on their own time, more power to them. I respect them for doing that at the end of the day. Now, there's some very exciting fights on this card that I really want to talk about, but I'm only going to talk about the main event. But there's a huge plethora of international fighters that are going to be fighting on this card today, and a lot of them making their UFC debuts as well. So if there are a lot of fighters on this card that you do not know of, then don't be afraid to say it, because there's a good amount on there that I personally don't know of either, which makes it more exciting because it's always good to see new and fresh faces in the UFC. The roster has more than, I believe, 600 fighters, which is absolutely ridiculous and it's absolutely crazy. But all in all, there's the UFC is an ever-growing organization, and it does have sub-organizations behind it that it does that it does own. I know there's island fights that happens in Florida that they own as well, and I know a good amount of upcoming UFC fighters have gone through the regional circuit via island fights or other fights on the regional circuit to get to the UFC. So I just wanted to let you guys know about that, just because there's always going to be brand new people going into the UFC, brand new faces that you're going to see. So just because you don't know someone, don't immediately think that this person is going to be a boring fighter, because I saw some new people in UFC 251 and they just put on a great display of a performance and so what and so forth. But going back to the main event, Kattar versus Ige, these guys love to bang, and a little bit of history being made with this main event, because Dan Ige would be the first Dana White Contender Series fighter to actually headline a main event. So Dana White's Contender Series has been going on for about 3 seasons, so it happened 3 or 4 years ago, and Dan Ige came through from the Dana White's Contender Series. I personally didn't know it because I never got to see the first season. I've only seen the third season. That's pretty much it, and a good amount of fights from the second season via YouTube. But other than that, I think that's a really interesting fact, just because I thought Ige was brought in via, through the regional circuit, but he wasn't. Even though he's been in the UFC for a while now. I believe he's had 7 fights in total, and now this is going to be his 8th fight in the UFC, which is pretty crazy. But the guy likes to stay active. He likes to fight. He likes to bang, and so does Calvin Kattar as well, the New England product coming out from the Boston area. And if you like someone who really likes to stand and bang, he's another guy. His boxing is really good. He used to train with the legendary Irish Mickey Ward, which basically sums up why he's got really nice hands. And he's not afraid to go to the ground when he wants to. The same thing with Ige as well. Both fighters had won their last fights. I didn't really think that Ige won against Barbosa, just because I believe those 2 takedowns that Barbosa got in their fight was enough to win it for him. But like I said, the judging system is very flawed in the UFC, and they ended up screwing over Edson Barbosa and giving Ige the win, which propelled him to this main event spot against Kattar. But Kattar was able to win his last fight against Jeremy Stephens. Stephens came in overweight by 4 or 5 pounds, and he ended up knocking out Jeremy Stephens in the second round. And this is definitely a game Jeremy Stevens. It wasn't a Jeremy Stevens that felt bad about losing weight. He knew that his purse was going to go to majority of his purse was going to go to Calvin Kattar, so he needed the win no matter what. But he didn't, unfortunately. Kattar was a little bit too strong, and his mental fortitude was a whole lot better than Jeremy Stevens at the end of the day, which is why he got caught with that elbow. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Kattar caught Ige with an elbow during tonight's showing, but we shall see what happens. But all in all, this is going to be a great fight. Both fighters like to stand and bang. Both fighters aren't afraid to go to the ground at the same time. And I wouldn't say that these guys have a lot of experience when it comes to the BJJ, just because I've never seen both of them really work on the ground that much before. Even though Kattar, he was on the ground. He was on the ground a little bit against Zabit, and he didn't really have a good position. He was on the bottom, which means basically that he had a hard time coming back up, and that was during the very end of their fight, which was a three round main event, which is extremely rare in the UFC. But Zabit's got a very powerful manager, cough cough, Ali Abdelaziz. So they were able to make it into a 3-round main event fight instead of a 5. So Kattar lost that round, but a lot of people said that Kattar was catching on in the 3rd round, and it would have been really interesting to see if it were a 5-round fight. If it would have been a 5-round fight, then I believe that Kattar would have won that fight, but sadly didn't. But that was one of his 2 losses in the UFC. His first loss was against Renato Moicano, and that's also another quality loss because Moicano is a really great fighter. He's got some really good stand-up. He's got some really good jiu-jitsu, and just Kattar wasn't good enough that night. But I believe that was Kattar's 3rd fight in the UFC. Kattar's he's had the better opponents than Ige. That's what I gotta give the advantage to when it comes to Kattar. He's been in there with the best of them so far, and I believe with a win against Ige, it will definitely propel him up the rankings and definitely get him that title shot that he really wants, that he really needs at the same time. And I do believe he can pose a lot of issues to Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski was actually watching his fight against Jeremy Stevens in UFC 249. So that was another very interesting point right there. And UFC 249 took place in May. 2 months later, he's back at it again. So, like I said, Ige isn't the only one who likes to stay active. It is also Calvin Kattar as well. Ige has only lost 1 fight in the UFC. He's been reeling off a 6-fight win streak, which is another important thing to take note of. So these guys both have streaks on the line. They both have everything to lose on the line as well, just because whoever wins this fight will definitely set themselves up for a bigger match against someone in the top 5 very soon in the near future, depending on how everything shapes in the featherweight division. I'm not a matchmaker, but if Kattar were to win, I would really like to see him face Max Holloway. If Ige were to win, I'd really like to see him face Zabit. But it all depends on what happens, because I do believe that Alexander Volkanovski's next opponent is most likely going to be Triple C, Henry Cejudo, who really wants to get that 3rd strap. No one in the history of the UFC has won 3 belts in 3 different weight classes, which is another interesting fact right there. But that's the fight I believe Volkanovski's going to take, just because of how much money is going to be on the line when it comes to that fight. So, like I said, if Ige wins, I'd like to see him fight Zabit. If Kattar wins, I'd like to see him fight Max Holloway. If not Max Holloway, then I'd really like to see him fight someone who's really interesting in the division, someone that we haven't seen fight in a long time, and that'll be Yair Rodriguez, who's been on a very long layoff for some reason. But other than that, guys, tonight's fights are going to be really good. They're going to be really fun. This is UFC Fight Island Part 2, and I do believe that this fight card is going to be better than UFC 251. Not the main card. The main card was actually really good, but definitely the prelims. The prelims of this fight card are going to be great. And I do believe that the main event's also going to deliver as well, just because of the amount of talent that the whole card has in total. So appreciate you guys for watching this video. I'm going to come out with some more. There's another fight night coming on this Saturday, but I will talk about that in my next video. So Appreciate you guys for watching. God bless and stay safe during this COVID-19 period. Later.